Welcome to the GigRoots podcast. GigRoots tells the story of the grassroots economy in America. I'm your host, Ethan Daly. During each episode, I interview the individuals who are working towards social and economic transformation at the grassroots level. In this inaugural kickoff episode, I speak with Enoch Elwell. He's the founder of Co-Starters, an organization that helps people and communities thrive through entrepreneurship. Back in 2008, Co-Starters began as an initiative to serve the local community of Chattanooga, Tennessee. Since then, it has grown to serve over 12,000 entrepreneurs nationally, as well as across the globe. Collaboration has been a hallmark of Co-Starters from the beginning. Working alongside a local nonprofit, the team observed that more non-traditional entrepreneurs, like artists, makers, and other creatives, needed an unconventional support structure to help them grow their businesses. As with other communities, the vision called for revitalization in order to create a sustainable economic ecosystem. Over the last few years, this notion has also taken root in cities across America. This in turn has led to the rise of ESOs, or entrepreneurial support organizations. ESOs are typically nonprofits whose missions are defined by the under-resourced conditions around them. Aspiring entrepreneurs in these communities can struggle from years of disinvestment. When the coronavirus outbreak hit cities earlier this year, chronic disparities for historically disinvested neighborhoods were made all the more visible. Yet the greatest asset for recovery comes from the people who have been working toward ecosystem building all along. And the tools made available through technology present innovative and unique opportunities. From the privacy of his Tennessee home, Enoch fervently describes for me his love of building community. And during this time of social distancing, he continues to reach out and convene others as best as he's able. We talk about the importance of trust in the midst of COVID-19 and how ESOs can facilitate meaningful exchange among their entrepreneurs.
So should we jump right into it?
Yeah, let's talk about ESOs, shall we?
Sure.
So within your organization, Co-Starters, can you talk about how many ESOs you guys are working with currently?
Yeah, so we, over the past several years, we've worked with about 200 different communities around the world, mostly in the US. And each community has a set of entrepreneur support organizations that hopefully are working together to support the local businesses in the community. So we start with one, right? We actually start with a person, just a person who cares. And typically that person is either working with an ESO or has a relationship with an ESO. And then we kind of bring in that support organization, and together with some grassroots leaders and an entrepreneur support organization, we then do our work.
So you just mentioned the acronym, what it stands for there, but ESO meaning Entrepreneur Support Organization. As I was saying to you before, I'm not sure how many folks are actually self-applying that title.
Yeah, well, it's kind of funny at Co-Starters, we like to get away from a lot of the, we call it MBA speak, and we try to keep things as simple as possible. Our values are, people first, in the context of community, right, and keeping it simple, right? So we think if we do those things, we'll be okay, because there's a lot of people who don't self-identify as an ESO, organizations, right? And then individuals who don't self-identify as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, as a startup or whatever, but they're still doing great stuff. They've still got awesome businesses. And so we really try to get to the root of it, right? Which is there are organizations that exist that really believe that the best way to help a community thrive is through entrepreneurship in some way. And their organization is kind of geared toward that bent. And so some people might call them an ESO, but they might not even think about that. They're just here to help build their community, and they think entrepreneurship can do that. There's so many people who are just doing great work, who are trying to make the world a better place, trying to share something wonderful with others, and trying to make it sustainable and pay their bills, and would never call themselves a business owner, maybe, or an entrepreneur or a startup. But that's kind of what they're doing. They're running a self-sustaining organization, a business. So we try to get past the jargon and get to the heart of it.
But you touch on something I think that's really important there, Enoch, when you're talking about what qualifies as an entrepreneur. We have an idea of what an entrepreneur is, meaning a societal picture of what that means. But very often that can exist at a lot of different levels. And so when I hear you talking about community, I think, what is the role of the community entrepreneur? What does that person look like?
And that's what's really fun, because when you open up to a broader definition, then there are all kinds of people out there who are doing I believe, some of the best work for our society, and are under-recognized, kind of underappreciated, and under-supported when they are truly the fabric of our society. And so some examples, right? People who may be doing side projects, right? Kind of call it their side hustle, right? Where they're maybe just creating a space for people to get together and hang out. I'm thinking of this guy, his name's Big Chris in Chattanooga. And he's got his little like burger trailer, that's set up on the corner, a couple miles from my house. And he's got his little picnic table set up out front, and he's only open a couple days a week, but that's where the neighborhood gets together. That's where people hang out, right? It's this gathering spot in a place that doesn't have many gathering spots. And so he's doing it because he loves his community. He grew up there, the community's fallen on some hard times. There's not really, much going, and he wanted to bring some life back into the community. And that's why he's doing it, right? So he's selling burgers. You could say he's a small business, but really, he's building his community and creating a gathering place and bringing people together, building that cultural fabric, and he's doing that through burgers. And that's, I think, the difference. He sees himself as a guy who's just trying to help and trying to, invest in his community the way he knows how, making really good burgers, right? And so I love that shift.
When you describe somebody like Big Chris, I mean, to me, that's like a perfect picture of what we talk about when we mean a neighborhood entrepreneur. Mm-hmm. It's somebody that's often all about the hustle. And they're doing that, as you said, to try to benefit the community, but try to bring people together. And they're doing it hopefully as a means to help supplement some of their income as well. Absolutely. So there's also an element of necessity entrepreneurship that's in there that we need to talk about. And so when we look at the landscape of entrepreneurship, I think what we're describing here is we're talking about really this micro enterprise, this micro entrepreneur, this guy, this gal, whoever it is, operating at a neighborhood level, and very typically, very often within a community context where they're dealing with a lot of other challenges.
Yeah. And, that's the hard thing, because, someone like Chris I was telling you about, he's there to just invest in his community, all that kind of stuff. And then there's like silly things like regulations that get in the way, and all these things that his goal isn't to have like the next, franchise of, White Castle or whatever. His goal is to just do something meaningful and good, and sure, grow it, make some income. But he's not really coming at it from a business first approach, maybe, right? And so the challenge becomes, how do you, when you're just trying to just do what you care about, do the good work, also deal with all the business stuff that kind of gets in the way of doing that good work, and use that business stuff to your advantage so you can actually have a really profitable, sustainable, life-giving venture, and not something that bleeds you dry. So that's where I think, ESOs of various kinds, whether you call yourself that or not, but really I think the biggest, maybe the biggest concept is support networks come in, right? I think the best value that ESOs can provide isn't just resources, information. Like Google exists. There's lots of information out there. But providing a community where people in business are stuck, can get together and connect with each other and have this kind of network of trust, that is invaluable, and that's not something that can be replicated by all the free webinars online. So I really am seeing a lot of these support organizations shine right now in the current crisis that we're in, because of the trust and the relationships and connections they've built over time. Where there's a deep well of resources to draw from, and that's not just information, it's relational resources.
Well, in some ways it's both, right? I mean, they're presenting the information, but they're doing it within a community context, and they are trying to build that trust and build those relationships like you talked about. But let's talk about that, because, right now the challenge is we're not able to get together, right? Everybody is separated. Everybody's working and living at home due to COVID-19. So, what are you seeing within your context and some of the challenges that the ESOs are facing right now?
Yeah, well, I think it's really exposing the true colors of sorts, or maybe the depth of relationships and community that these organizations have built. Because some, through their activity and their gatherings and their place, have developed a very tight-knit community and a strong, culture of support and all the stuff, which transcends, in-person meetings and walls and all that. People are connected and they care about each other, and they're committed to helping each other. And so, they find a way, right? And so you could say the the organizations, the support organizations that build up that trust over time and build up the interconnection over time, that robust kind of ecosystem, that culture, that community of support, they're doing great right now. And they're, everybody's kind of hitting on all cylinders. But for maybe the organizations that didn't develop that depth of relationship, they're really struggling because, it's too little too late. They're trying to connect with people, but, if there's no relationship, it's really hard to start one virtually over Zoom if nobody joins your Zoom call, right? So we're seeing a pretty harsh division of sorts of the people who've built good relationships, collaborated really well, build up that trust. They're cashing in on that trust now and creating a lot of value all around. And those who didn't, it's exposed to them the need of that. And they're trying to play a little catch up.
How is that value going to end up translating to a larger impact, you think, right now, given all the challenges that entrepreneurs and businesses of every size are currently dealing with?
Yeah, I mean, what is it? I think I can't remember who said it, so I can't attribute this, but someone said innovation moves at the speed of trust. And I really believe that to be true. To build kind of the future world that we are working toward, we don't even know what it is yet, right? Requires two things together. It requires clarity, density of trust, and clarity of purpose. When you have strong trust, you're able to work together in the unknown, right? And also when you have clarity of purpose, you're able to work together in the unknown, but you need both. So there's an example I like to use at events where I show a picture. I don't know if you've heard of like the crocodile and the plover bird that picks at its teeth and keeps its teeth clean, right? So that's like a picture of trust, right? Crocodile opens its mouth, a little tiny bird walks inside of its mouth and doesn't get eaten. That's density of trust. But that only works because there's clarity of purpose, because the plover is coming in for one job, to clean that crocodile's teeth. If the plover starts picking at the crocodile's tongue, it's gone, right? And so that relationship is able to work and be mutually beneficial because there's clear purpose and there's trust, right? And they grow together over time. If you don't have either, it's really hard. And so with that, what I really believe to be true, and if you want to dig in more into those concepts, there's a book called Team of Teams, written by General Stanley McChrystal, who really digs into that a whole lot deeper through experience they had with the Special Forces of the United States, having to shift their strategies for kind of a changing society, a changing value set, as we move from industrial age hierarchical systems to connected age connected systems. That's a little bit of an aside, but I believe that right now, the current crisis we're in with COVID-19 is just like a little mini cycle of the much bigger transition we're in, as we're kind of coming to the end of society as we've known it with industrial age thinking and doing, to a new way of thinking and doing. Hopefully, I know I threw a lot of concepts in there, so hopefully it's not too tangled up. But I think that's kind of what we're in. There's a lot of context that's all coming together right now, and it feels overwhelming because there's so many things going on at once.
Well, you got a lot of neurons fire in there, Enoch, and so I'm going to try to sift through those things. But I'm tracking with you absolutely. I think the larger point here is that we're all being forced to make this paradigm shift because of these larger forces that are at work, and so perhaps in some ways it's exposing some weaknesses in the system and some of the ways that we've been operating at these different levels. And in the case of ESOs at the community level, I came from an ESO. I came from an organization that I worked with on the south side of Chicago. And I noted that at the time, the things that we were focusing on were very tactile and specific. What we felt like the entrepreneurs that we were working with needed at that time, some of the biggest things they needed were elements around training, coaching, access to capital. Those things all seem to be important. And yet, we're at this situation now where we have lots of folks that have gone through some sort of training. They've been exposed to some sort of coaching relationship. So those things seem to be in place. And yet, when we talk about the levels at which these businesses are operating, what are the obstacles and what are the goals for somebody like that in order to actually take what they're doing at that small level and to start to incrementally grow it? And what do ESOs need to implement in order to help them do that right now?
So traditionally, like you were kind of giving the story in Chicago, and I believe this is true kind of all over the country. This is what we see everywhere. Most ESOs are focused on, providing information and, training, technical assistance, support resources. And that's all well and good. That's helpful. but it's not enough. It's more like a yes and type thing, right? And so it's like, which is hard because everybody's got limited resources and time. But the thing is, like, COVID-19 is showing this as a great example of, if you have a small group of highly trained experts who are like going to mentor all these businesses and kind of share their information, that's very valuable, right? It doesn't scale very well, and it's not very adaptable. For example, with COVID-19, all those experts, for all their experience and knowledge and all that, they actually don't know what to do right now, because nobody knows what to do right now. We don't have the answers. And so when you're in a time of need where there's a massive amount of need, and the time it would take to get experts identified and connected for the need that exists, you know, it might be 5 years or 10 years before you get that ready. It's not, and that, so that model doesn't even work. But then even if you did identify all those experts instantly and they were all ready to go and connected overnight, they still don't have the answers because the problem is complex and changing. And so I think it's exposing a flaw in the model. And again, that one-on-one support is still extremely valuable. It just doesn't meet the entire need. It's not a holistic solution. It's a part of the solution. And so to me, I think the bigger question is, how do we shift to find other ways to accelerate a more rapid holistic solution that builds off of and complements what we already do? And so, so the big question, one of the things we're looking at a lot across the Co-Starters network, and this is kind of something we really believe in, is how can we create peer learning environments, right? Where business owners help business owners, and together they figure out the answers to the problems that they have, right? They look at complex situations and emerging challenges, and in real time come together through a structured and facilitated process. Of course, that's required, but they actually can use the knowledge and experience they have together to solve their problems just as good, actually, as working with experts. And so we found this time and time again with over 12,000 businesses we supported over several years, that this kind of like facilitated peer learning environment is extremely effective and doesn't require experts and can happen in real time almost instantly. Just getting together a small group of peers who are all just as confused and stuck, but everybody has a little piece of the answer. And if you can set up the right environment with the right structure, with the right facilitation, with setting up some group norms and some trust, right? Kind of kickstart some of that trust and create that clarity of purpose, then you can get extremely valuable results where people can figure out their own stuff. Then the question becomes, how do we shift our activity from industrial age support models to also kind of push forward into some of these connected age models that are actually rapidly scalable and a much more cost effective and time effective as well, with significantly more impact. It's possible, people are doing it. The question is, how can we start on that road? I believe that's the biggest question to ask right now.
We're also moving into the digital age now as well, right? And so I want to talk about the role of e-commerce within all of this. Because when we talk about all these different businesses trying to reach customers, right now, that seems to be the main channel through which it happens. And so that seems to be a necessary component as to speaking about solutions that are needed there. So what role do you see e-commerce playing within this space right now?
Man, yeah, that's so important. I think though it's easy to just be looking for the silver bullets everywhere, right? Like, so if I sprinkle a little e-commerce dust on my business, it will magically turn into a unicorn, and that's just not true. Like, we don't find our success in e-commerce. We find our success in building a good business, that provides, that identifies a real problem that people have and really care about enough that they're willing to pay for it and deliver a quality product or service in a repeatable way. Like, the core of the business is the value. If we get that right, then we can expand that value much more efficiently and effectively in all kinds of ways. One of those being e-commerce, right? And so, like,
well, so it's what you were saying before. It's like, we don't need to replace what we're doing; we just need to add to it. It's both and.
Yeah, start with something good and then build something good. But you can throw. I mean, we've all seen it. There's all kinds of junk stuff, that's being sold on the internet and, mass marketed across Facebook ads everywhere, and all these stupid pop-ups that we try to ignore. And we can't get it away from us fast enough. Like, there's junk out there. We don't need to be junk and spend more money marketing online. We need to do something good And then if we've got something good, it can scale in a huge way online. So,
Well, so it occurs to me that, we have all these entrepreneurs that you mentioned within your network, for example, that they do have a quality product, they do have a quality business, and they have a great story to go along with it because they're at a level where they're struggling. And so can we use the tools at hand in order to communicate that to a customer base in order to build trust and to sort of reach that more conscientious consumer?
Oh, absolutely. And that's what's so exciting. Like in probably all of history, the ease to start a business and to grow a business is just, I know it doesn't feel like it, but it's so easy. Like there are so many amazing resources, powerful tools that are free or super cheap, and we can reach the entire world from our computer, even with a bad internet connection, right? It's amazing. And so, yeah, I think there are a lot of people who've got something good going, proven that first round, and feel stuck or feel stagnant or feel like they're hitting a wall, when there is a world of value on the other end if you just push a little harder through the wall with a little bit of help, to connect with some of these great tools and resources.
How aware do you think people are of the tools that exist?
Oh man, it's all over the place, I'd say. I would say probably for all of us, no matter how aware we are, we all probably know like maybe only like 10% of what exists. And I say that even for myself. Like the world is so big. There's so much technology being built every day. There's incredible resources and tools that, I'm just discovering every week something new. I was just talking with someone in Alabama that's using this text education platform. And so it's like a learning journey through text, right? Where you just text back and forth. Super cool tool. I didn't even know existed. And we're an education company essentially, right? Like I should know about this stuff, but I didn't know about that one. There's all kinds of incredible things out there. I don't know if you guys have come across Grommet in your research with this podcast and everything. This is great curated, resource for people who are launching, products, real tangible products and scaling them up. And it's a curated, almost like product hunt, a curated kind of product launch tool to get to millions of people right away.
So on the flip side of that, there's this wide, ever growing array of tools. And that's an overwhelming sea of complexity and information that's out there. And so I think that's the other piece of it. How did you sift through the information to find what are the right tools for me for my business right now?
Well, funny enough, I think that's actually the bigger problem, because we could spend our whole life trying to discover all the tools and we'd never find them all. And our whole life would be spent on researching and not doing, right? But finding tools doesn't pay the bills, I guess, right? But doing the most effective, next step for today and for tomorrow is what does, create the success. So the biggest challenge that I've seen for people with businesses or who are looking to start businesses is actually what you're talking about, the knowing what to do next. And knowing confidently that you're doing the best next thing, to move toward your goals. And having that clarity of purpose, having that focus, really, I think most effectively comes from having a good kind of team of support around you. Whatever that looks like. It could be you just gathering some friends and saying, hey, we're going to help each other out. We're going to provide some perspective to each other. And we're going to be our informal board of advisors for each other, right? It could be, entering into a formal program through the support of a local organization that, provides some of those resources. It could be a facilitated peer support group, which I see a lot of value in, but some way to help you sift through all the, what could be, and really focus on the, what you should do, what the best kind of, what is it, the most, urgent and important, that intersection. So you're doing the right thing at the right time, and then starting small, the next step, the little steps that keep you moving, and then staying informed by your customer. So you're doing what they actually want, will pay for.
Well, I imagine that's going to be difficult if you are not just a small business, but a very, very small business, right? Within a marginalized context, for those entrepreneurs, for that sector of the population, what sort of intervention is going to be needed now in order to help them?
I actually want to flip that around, because I think we believe, that because there might be less resources sitting around. There's not, a pile of money in a savings account, and there's not the rich uncle who will invest, $50,000 in your business. And there's not, therefore I can't do that. And that's just not true. Now, I do want to very clearly recognize, there are additional barriers, having to, I think everybody's experiencing this, right? When all the kids are at home and they're not in daycare or whatever, and you're trying to run a business with 3 kids, right behind you, that's hard, right? And so there are things that make it harder, right? But I do want to make it really clear that doesn't mean that it's the chances of having a successful business are therefore stacked against you. In some ways, actually, people with extra resources are in a worse position because they waste the resources, right? It's like, oh, I've got $50,000 to blow, so I'll just do all this fancy stuff. I won't talk to any customers. I'll just hope for the best, and I'll do it. And then they realize, oh, everything was wasted. They threw all that $50,000 down the drain and have to start over. That hurts, right? If you don't have $50,000 to waste, well, guess what? You got to make your thing work from the start. And it's harder, sure. But does it mean that you have a better business from the beginning? Yeah. So I think as long as you're living out those principles of starting small and, being customer focused, getting that direct customer interaction from the start, you don't need any money. You can start with nothing. You can sell the idea, get your first customers to prepay, and with the prepayment, start the thing, right? For me personally, I wanted to build some luxury tree houses just for fun for people to stay in. And I didn't have the money to build a tree house. Those things are expensive, actually. And so what we did is a crowdfunding campaign, and we said, well, is there anybody out there who wants to spend a bunch of money to stay in a fancy tree house? Let's just put it out there. We just put in some time, and put it out there to see if anybody pay. And we got people to prepay to stay in a tree house enough to actually pay for the construction, tens of thousands of dollars to build a tree house. So I firmly believe, and I've had other friends, also raise several $100,000 to start their business before they even had anything, just from customers. But that also scales down to something small, right? So I firmly believe that there are so many ways forward. We just think too big, and we give ourselves so many artificial barriers that we don't get started.
Well, I think that makes a lot of sense. And I think it speaks to, there's just this issue of a lot of psychological barriers that come into play. But, getting back to what the role of the ESO, to sort of think about all the different pieces that we've discussed, if an ESO is in a position where they're able to convene people in a trusting, caring environment in which there can be real shared learning in real time, it seems like that's going to be the way that we can actually put forth some decisions and takes a level of risk, because there's always a level of inherent risk in all of these different things that's inherent to entrepreneurship. But part of the ability to be able to take the risk is saying you have others alongside you who are willing to support you.
Yeah, I really believe that the role has shifted from entrepreneur support organizations primarily being the maybe educational institutions, the holders of information, to being more the cultural institutions, the builders of community. And I would say not every organization has made that shift, right? But that is I think the shift in the need, because with the internet, we have an overload of information. But in our culture right now, in our society, we have a huge lack of strong community and connection and support culture.
Well, Enoch, I want to thank you for your time, man. We got a lot of stuff in.
Yeah, we did.
That's great. So any last words about co-starters or what you guys are doing? What's one thing you guys are excited about right now?
So we spent a lot of time, working specifically with entrepreneur support organizations to help them kind of make this shift to build a stronger, support community, right? And all that. And so, we're still doing that work that's still really valuable to what we do. But what I'm really excited about right now, during the COVID-19 crisis, so many businesses are just trying to stay afloat and stabilize. We put a lot of energy now into working directly with business owners to just help them get back on track. And it's just so fun to reconnect more closely with business owners. That's who we exist to serve and build up. So I've really enjoyed that. For anybody who's out there who's trying to figure out what's next for me and my business, how do I stabilize and come out of this time, hopefully in a better place than when I came into it. We do have a suite of resources, many of which are free, on our website, costarters.co/road to recovery. So I encourage you to check that out. If you want, we're here for you. And I love what Ethan's doing here. just trying to build up a wider culture of support so that, we're more successful personally and in business. And in that work, we can, build up the lives of build up ourselves, our families, and our communities in a way that, hopefully builds a better world. So good stuff. Thanks so much for having me on with you.
Excellent, Enoch. We'll be talking to you again soon.
Excellent. Thank you.
There are millions of micro enterprises across the country seeking to bring their products, services, and ideas to the greater marketplace. ESOs are working alongside them, building trust and providing ongoing support. In a time of uncertainty, Co-Starters is dedicated to helping entrepreneurs reach the road to recovery during the current pandemic. To learn more, go to costarters.co/road to recovery. And be sure to keep listening to GigRoots as we continue telling the story of the grassroots economy in America. Check us out at grassrootsgig.com. That's all for now. We'll see you next time.